All right, let's step right into the mechanics of fear. Have you ever wondered what exactly makes a horror story immediately gripping the absolute second it hits the screen? Why do some premises just instantly hook us and refuse to let go? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dissect a really fascinating collection originally written in Urdu that outlines some incredibly potent screenplay prompts. We're going to break down the exact DNA of a cinematic nightmare.
So, I want to pose this question directly to you. What actually makes a horror story truly cinematic? Is it a massive budget with millions of dollars in special effects? Is it hours of complex, deep backstory? No way. The secret lies in immediate action and primal fears. A truly cinematic premise relies on a scenario that instantly communicates the stakes, completely skipping the need for heavy exposition. It drops a character into an impossible situation where the tension is literally baked right into the environment.
Now, our source material today is this brilliant curation of 10 actionable cinematic horror stories. But to keep things tight and impactful for our time together, we're going to focus entirely on isolating and exploring 4 core nightmares from this collection. These aren't just your standard spooky campfire tales. These are highly specific, effective blueprints for filmmakers, writers, and creators. They show us exactly how to build a world of dread using just a few perfectly chosen pieces.
Here is our roadmap. We've got 4 distinct stories happening across 4 completely different settings. We have The Last Signal out in deep space, Basement Number 13 in tight underground spaces, The Hollow Forest in the dense wilderness, and The Mirror Protocol bridging the digital and real worlds. Notice how just the simple combination of an isolated location and an impossible scenario creates instant tension. Just by grasping the settings, your brain is already anticipating the danger. Let's look at how each of these mechanics works.
Exhibit A, The Last Signal, a sci-fi horror.
This first premise preys on the sheer isolation and absolute vulnerability of deep space, because out there, nobody is coming to save you. Consider this translated quote from the original Urdu prompt: "No one is alive, but the signal is still coming." Just think about that for a second. The eerie contradiction in that single sentence is the entire movie. You have the absolute certainty of death, completely shattered by an ongoing call for help. It's a paradox that demands investigation, and man, that is a brilliant cinematic hook.
The mechanics of this setup are just incredibly efficient. Our protagonist is a scientist, someone driven by logic and reason, which is exactly the kind of mind you want to break in a horror movie. The setting is a desolate space station, meaning zero escape routes. The inciting incident is a call for help, giving our character a noble reason to walk right into a trap. And the twist? That terrifying ghost signal. With just these 4 elements, you can probably already see the movie playing out in your head.
Moving on to Exhibit B, Basement Number 13, a claustrophobic thriller. We're transitioning from the infinite, terrifying vastness of deep space right down into a tight, dark, suffocating thriller. The exact moment the tension spikes off the charts is right here. When the detective gets locked in a basement, the game begins. It is the classic hunter becomes the hunted trope. The investigator was confidently chasing the killer right up until that heavy metal door slams shut behind them.
Let's break down why this is so effective. We have a detective as our protagonist, right? Normally, a detective represents authority, control, having the upper hand. By entirely stripping this protagonist of their power and trapping them in a confined, labyrinth-like setting, like the basements of an old building, you instantly create ultimate vulnerability. The threat isn't just a guy with a weapon. It's a deadly game where the killer completely controls the environment. It's an instant, high-stakes thriller premise that requires minimal locations to film but delivers absolutely maximum psychological impact.
Next up, Exhibit C, The Hollow Forest, a classic creature feature.
Leaving the concrete basement behind, we are plunged right into a brutal wilderness survival scenario. Something, not human, is picking them off one by one. The primal terror here is off the charts. The explicit mention of a non-human entity instantly raises the stakes. We aren't dealing with a killer whose motives we can understand or negotiate with. We are dealing with an apex predator, and the humans have just become prey.
Notice the brilliant contrast in these elements. Our protagonists are a heavily armed military squad, quite literally trained for war, but the setting is a dense forest, and the threat is an unseen, non-human entity. Rendering heavily armed, highly capable soldiers utterly helpless against a force of nature is an absolute masterclass in building cinematic suspense. It tells the audience, hey, if these guys can't survive, nobody can.
And finally, Exhibit D, Mirror Protocol, a dive into psychological and cyber horror.
Stepping out of the woods and into the cold, glowing screens of the modern era, this next premise carries a genuinely horrifying implication. His exact copy, but evil, is stepping into the real world. Think about that twist. In most cyber thrillers, the threat stays safely behind the screen. It drains your bank account or ruins your reputation. But here, the digital boundary is completely shattered. Something malicious has gained physical form, and it's wearing your face.
This creates a phenomenal central conflict. You have the original hacker, a human, suddenly turned victim, totally grounded in reality. Contrast that against an evil digital copy, crossing over into physical space. Pitting these two forces directly against each other builds an incredibly compelling modern thriller. It asks the ultimate paranoid question: what happens when the technology you think you control decides it's time to replace you?
Bringing us to our provocative conclusion, choose your nightmare. We've journeyed through isolation, claustrophobia, the primal wilderness, and deep digital paranoia. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to remind you that these are not just spooky concepts to read and forget. These are highly practical blueprints. The mechanics we unpack today, the precise pairing of a vulnerable protagonist, an isolated setting, and a relentless threat, these are the exact tools you can use to construct your own stories.
So, I'm leaving you with this final thought. Which of these nightmares would you dare to bring to life? Whether you're a writer, a filmmaker, or honestly just a massive fan of the genre, the formula for terror is right here in front of you. Take these blueprints, twist them, make them your own, and start creating. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into cinematic horror. Now go write something terrifying,